Hello, and welcome to 5-Year Club video number 313. This will be an exciting one. Alright, well the reason I decided to talk about Sears tonight, why? Because I got into like a Facebook argument. Some people were talking about this article, Bankrupt Sears wants to give executives $19 million in bonuses. And I just felt like, because the people were complaining like, why are the executives getting paid when they fail to run the company? When they ran the company into the ground, blah, 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 stuff like that. And, it's not fair. Executives get the golden parachute while the little man gets screwed. And I felt like that was really unfair because I have seen... I've seen different business situations, and I think that's a very shallow view of the situation. And I think that just like people want to be seen as the nuanced individual they are, and people want their culture and their background to be seen as the nuanced thing that it is, just like Americans don't want to be seen as, a crass TV stereotype. Executives and managers, right, at every level, are hardworking people who many times have been working at that company for decades to get to where they are, and they don't deserve to be thrown under the bus in a situation where as the company fails, the company tries to incentivize the person to stay because they have skills that will help the company to lose less money during one of these processes that are both very complicated and also very, very costly. So let's just read the original article a little bit. Bankrupt Sears wants to give executives $19 million in bonuses. Sears is seeking court approval to pay executives as much as $19 million in quarterly bonuses while the company struggles to restructure in bankruptcy. 3 top executives could get nearly $1 million each if the company goes out of business. If Sears remains in business, they could get nearly $500,000 each for hitting the top performance targets. I'd like to rephrase this paragraph a little bit because I feel like it's kind of a weird way that this article phrases it. 3 top executives could get nearly $1 million each if they decide to stay, right? And the company goes out of business. Because who wants to stay on a sinking ship? And this is something that I've seen that if it's not, maybe if you don't have experience with it, you don't understand it. But when companies don't perform, the top performers leave. The most talented people leave. The people with the biggest networks, the most options, they go away. And that tends to accelerate the decline of the company. And if you're trying to keep the company alive and you begin to see these departures, this is an exponential process. This is not a slow process. All right? The people with the most options leave first. Many times those are people near the top of the company. Many times those are people who have hired teams who are connected to many other people at the company. And many times people on those teams are demoralized when they see the person who hired them leave, and they leave also. So these people at the top of the company, not only is it bad when they leave because they have a lot of experience, they have a lot of knowledge of the company, but they also are very tempted to leave because they have so many opportunities, and when they leave, they cause other people to leave, and then that cascades into causing other people to leave, and pretty soon, everybody's gone, and there's nobody to handle the unpleasant stuff that has to happen during a restructuring, during a bankruptcy. During bankruptcy, people have to be let go, right? Somebody has to do that job. Somebody has to decide who to let go and who not to let go. And it's not a fun process, right? Because essentially during a bankruptcy or whatever it is, you're trying to crash land a plane. And it's ugly, and in many cases, you don't have a good option. You're just trying to weigh bad options to pick the least bad one. And so, when it says that $1 million each, if they stay and the company goes out of business, these people are being compensated for staying in a place when that place crashes. And for the rest of their career, people get to say, oh, you were the chief executive whatever when Sears went under. It's not a great thing to be known for. So, this paragraph makes it sound like they're motivated to crash the company, right? Whereas in reality, these people probably have significant stock options. And those stock options right now are worthless. And, if they were able to generate enough cash flow to keep the company going and their stock came back, my guess is that would be worth substantially more than this $1 million payout. But I'm not a genius at this. I'm not sure. That's just my guess. All right. Sears filed 2 different types of bonus plans in bankruptcy court Thursday. The first is for the top 18 key executives who would collectively get as much as $2.1 million per quarter. The bonuses would only be paid in full if Sears reaches its cash flow targets. Sears Holdings, which includes both Sears and Kmart, has been burning through cash at a rate of about $125 million a month. A second retention bonus plan was designed to encourage 322 other unnamed executives to stay put during Sears' reorganization. They would collectively get $16.9 million a quarter, which works out to an average of about $52,000 per quarter per executive. No executive could receive more than $150,000 in bonuses for staying with the company during the bankruptcy process. A judge's approval is needed before the bonuses could be paid. Why? Because Sears owes creditors a bunch of money, and you don't necessarily want to pay that money to employees when it owes those creditors so much money. A hearing on the plans is set for December 20th. The company wants to retain as many executives as it can, but Sears is laying off employees who staffed hundreds of stores it is closing. Many hourly workers claim they will not be paid severance. Sheila Brewer, who worked for 17 years as a full-time hourly employee at Kmart in Rockford, Illinois, said the company told her she'd get 8 weeks of severance. Instead, she received a letter saying that severance payments were being halted because of the bankruptcy, and she would get only the 4 weeks of pay she had already received. Right? Okay, so employees get screwed. That's true. Even if they've been working there for 17 years. And, I don't do this calculation. My guess is that if they're closing that store anyway, this is a financial calculation. Like, that person was going to be let go anyway. With the executives, they're harder to rehire, especially in an environment where you got 3 or 4% unemployment. Eddie Lampert, the company's primary shareholder and chairman, apparently will not receive a bonus according to the filing. Yeah, because he stepped down as CEO October 15th. And his decisions are also in large part responsible for Sears' failure. The 3 top executives who are given the responsibility for running the company during its reorganization are in position for the largest bonuses. They are Chief Financial Officer Robert Riker, Chief Digital Officer Lena Munjal, and Gregory Ladley, president of the company's clothing and footwear business. Each could receive as much as $240,000 a quarter in bonus payments for hitting the maximum cash flow targets. They could receive 4 times that much if Sears goes out of business, in something the company calls an acceleration event. Retention bonuses for top executives are not unusual when companies go bankrupt, but bankruptcy law limits how much severance companies can pay. Toys R Us won approval for up to $16 million in bonuses for 17 top executives a year ago during its failed attempt to stay in business despite objections from employee groups and others. It's outrageous that the bankruptcy court is considering bonuses for Sears' highest paid executives while laid off employees get their severance pay cut off. Yeah. I mean, this is, in a way, this is very much like a battle between employees and essentially owners of the company, right? Which at this point are creditors. Who gets the money? Who gets leftover money? Is it given to companies that gave Sears products on credit and haven't been paid for those products? Or is it going to be given to employees? And, the law seems pretty clear on it. The law favors investors / creditors. People have to be paid back. All right, so let's look at what bankruptcy is for a second. Bankruptcy is a legal status of a person or other entity who cannot repay debts to creditors. In most jurisdictions, bankruptcy is imposed by a court order, often initiated by the debtor. Bankruptcy is not the only legal status that an insolvent person may have, and the term bankruptcy is therefore not a synonym for insolvency. In some countries, such as the United Kingdom, bankruptcy is limited to individuals. But let's look at the US of A. Bankruptcy in the United States is a matter placed under federal jurisdiction by the United States Constitution, which empowers Congress to enact uniform laws on the subject of bankruptcies. Throughout the United States, Congress has enacted statutes governing bankruptcy primarily in the form of the Bankruptcy Code, located in Title 11 of the U.S. Code. Let's see, and so basically there are two kinds of bankruptcy. Personal bankruptcy, I'm just going to tell you what I know. Typically, there is going to be Chapter 7, basic liquidation for individuals and businesses, known as straight bankruptcy. It is the simplest and quickest form of bankruptcy available, and this is the one where you basically sell all your stuff, you give up everything, and then creditors can't go after you after that, I guess, unless you owe some student loans, which cannot be discharged in bankruptcy. But you sell all your stuff, you lose pretty much everything. And the other type is Chapter 13, right, which I believe is the more common type, because qualifying for Chapter 7, you really have to show that you're screwed and you're never going to be able to repay this stuff. Chapter 13, rehabilitation with a payment plan for individuals with a regular source of income. So if you have a job, they're going to have a payment plan to pay back your debts to creditors. And you may not pay back all the debts to creditors. You definitely may not pay back your debts to creditors on the schedule that you were on before. But it enables individuals with regular income to develop a plan to repay all or part of their debts. And it's a structured plan that you have to follow. And if you don't follow it, then you're going to go back to court and they're going to yell at you. So this is, what Sears is going... Well, Sears is going through one of these right now, right? So which one is Sears going through? Sears files chapter what? Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So Sears is going for rehabilitation or reorganization used primarily by business debtors, but sometimes by individuals with substantial debts and assets. Known as corporate bankruptcy, it is a form of corporate financial reorganization which typically allows companies to continue to function while they follow debt repayment plans. So Sears is trying to stay in business and develop some kind of way to pay back its debts. And they have quite a bit. Let's look at this article about it. Sears bankruptcy, how it got here, and what happens next. The once dominant American retailer hopes to reemerge with some part of its business intact. This is from October 15th, 2018, same day that Eddie Lampert stepped down. It was a long time coming for Sears Holding Corp., the venerable American retailer, founded back in 1893, filed for Chapter 11 early Monday. The move would allow Sears to restructure in hopes of re-emerging from bankruptcy with part of the business still standing. The news came as a surprise to no one who's been following Sears' long demise, because the company has been bleeding cash for years. 10 years of declining comparable sales and annual losses since 2010 combined to fully erode what was the country's largest retailer just a generation ago. While there are plenty of scapegoats, Eddie Lampert, who stepped down as CEO but remains chairman and the company's biggest shareholder, seems to deserve much of the blame. Lampert merged the company with Kmart in 2005, rescuing the discount retailer from bankruptcy. But the move turned out to be misguided. The hedge fund manager refused to make needed investments in the two brands, relying instead on financial engineering to extract value from the company through a series of asset sales and sale leaseback arrangements, including the creation of Seritage Growth Properties, which became the landlord of 235 Sears locations in 2015. Sears largely missed the boat on e-commerce, allowed Home Depot and Lowe's to take its appliance business, and lost ground in apparel to rival department store chains. Over the last 5 years, the company's store count has fallen by more than 50% to less than 700 stores, but closing unprofitable stores and selling and spinning off assets, including the Craftsman tool brand and Land's End outdoor apparel brand, have not saved or improved the underlying business. After several cash infusions and arrangements with Lampert's own hedge fund, ESL Investments, the company faced a $134 million debt payment on October 15th that it couldn't meet, while simultaneously trying to stock up on inventory for the coming holiday season. Sears is reportedly in talks with ESL Investments for a $300 million loan for cash that would help see the company through bankruptcy. As part of the bankruptcy filing, the company, and if you look at a $300 million loan is only about $500,000 per store. I don't know how much these stores burn every month, but for a large Sears store, $500,000 doesn't seem like a huge amount of money to me. As part of the bankruptcy filing, the company announced it will close 142 stores by the end of the year, in addition to 46 locations that were already slated to close by next month. It's possible the company will also sell off real estate and other assets, such as the Kenmore brand, which Lampert had offered to buy for $400 million, and other businesses such as Sears Home Services and Sears Auto Centers. As of August 4th, Sears had $11.3 billion in liabilities compared to just $6.9 billion in assets, an unsustainable gap for almost any business. Included in the liabilities, current liabilities of $4.3 billion, which are due within a year, $3.5 billion in long-term debt, and $1.2 billion in pension benefits. Oh no. That is tragic. I hope that they will carve out some of the $6.9 billion in assets to cover those pension benefits. Lenders, which include Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Citibank, will be repaid according to a court decision. Generally, secured lenders will be paid back before unsecured ones. Considering that Sears has several $billion more in liabilities than assets, shareholders will very likely be wiped out, as indicated by the fact that shares had fallen to less than 50 cents before the bankruptcy declaration. So, shareholder being wiped out, it's not surprising, right? You own a part of a company that owes $4 billion more than it has. That stock doesn't sound very profitable. What it means for customers: there's a good chance that your local Sears or Kmart stores will close. Investors have responded to the news by sending JCPenney shares higher. So they think JCPenney will benefit. If you have a gift card for Sears, you should try to use it as soon as possible, because the retailer's obligation to honor such cards enters a gray area after a bankruptcy declaration. I think that's kind of fucked up. If you're an operating business and somebody bought a gift card from you, and suddenly they're not responsible for paying it because of a bankruptcy declaration, what the fuck? Does that also mean their return policy is bogus? Extended warranties on appliances and similar products go in the trash can. Expected to continue allowing product returns. Yeah. Apparently, it will take product returns, but they get crazy when it goes into bankruptcy. Okay, so Sears employees, who number 140,000, are likely to be out of a job soon. And perhaps because of the low unemployment rate, these employees could be snapped up by other retailers. I hope these people are leaving and looking for a job already. That would make a lot of sense. And whatever happens next, Sears' bankruptcy is likely to be messy, because they have a myriad of creditors, including its former CEO. All right. So that's kind of an overview of it. Let's look into a few of the details here. I've got this other article. Why Eddie Lampert stuck with Sears. Eddie Lampert was heralded as a financial genius when he bought Sears in 2005 through a merger with Kmart. Business Week ran his picture on the cover with the headline, "The Next Warren Buffett." No one thinks that now, with the possible exception of Lampert himself. Oh, and I can't help myself. I have to go back to this article that's not there anymore. Remember, the pension benefits was considered a liability. What does that mean? It means that if you were depending upon a Sears pension for your retirement, maybe you are completely screwed. I don't know what's going to happen in this bankruptcy. I don't know what the court's going to decide, how they're going to prioritize things. But just like I've said before on this channel, do not depend on a corporate pension to handle your retirement. Pretend that it doesn't exist. You can't count on it. Same goes for state employees. Do not count on a state pension to handle your retirement. California needed an $80 billion bailout. Their pension fund is underfunded by $36 billion right now. Or sorry, it's 36%. It's underfunded, I think, by over $100 billion. Like, you can't count on this stuff. So don't plan to not have it. All right, back to this article. Eddie Lampert was heralded as a financial genius. Well, you know what? I can't stand it. I don't want to say California pensions are underfunded by $100 billion. CalSTRS funding gap. Okay, so $71 billion. So I definitely overstated it. It's only $71 billion, not $100 billion. I'm sorry. That's still a bunch, guys. Anyway, back to this article. No one thinks that now, with the possible exception of Lampert himself. He slashed costs with a chainsaw. He let Sears and Kmart stores grow barren and run down, eventually leading Sears into bankruptcy. Lampert made his money at Goldman Sachs' rich arbitrage department and at legendary investor Richard Rainwater's hedge fund. He used that money to start his own fund. His best bet was on AutoNation AutoZone, which soared in value and made him a billionaire. Lampert's first investment was in Kmart, which he bought out of bankruptcy. He cut capital spending, inflating earnings and its stock price. He then used that inflated stock to buy Sears. So he bought his Sears shares with inflated stock. He owns like 49% of Sears or something like that. It'll say in the article. He hasn't gotten rich as Sears CEO and chairman. He took $1 a year in salary since becoming CEO, and he received the rest of his pay in now worthless stock and options. His majority stake in Sears stock has essentially been wiped out. As Sears, with all the other shareholders, by the way, as Sears blew through its dwindling cash reserves, Lampert's hedge fund made loans to the company, money that were backed by the company's assets. So, in a way, that's essentially like buying the company's assets, right? Because you give the company money, the company is going to default on the loan or whatever, and they're going to give you the assets later, including real estate balances on Sears credit cards. That's bizarre, including real estate balances on Sears credit cards? What does that even mean? That made him Sears' largest creditor. Sears owes him at least $1.3 billion. So a company that is $4 billion in the hole still owes him $1.3 billion. Not a good situation for Mr. Lampert. Even if Sears liquidates, he'll end up holding real estate worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Well, so that's nice, but he'll be $1.3 billion in the hole with only hundreds of millions above water. Not great. Lampert also acquired some of the most attractive Sears and Kmart locations through a real estate investment company, Seritage, of which he is also the chairman and a major shareholder. Seritage bought hundreds of properties from Sears and Kmart. The absentee but let's think about what happened, right? So this guy owns like roughly half of Sears, okay? And his investment company loans the company money that is backed by the company's assets. Let's just call it a sale. Let's just say that the company sold him this stuff. So the company sells its owner some of its assets at a discount. So in some ways, Eddie Lampert sold himself this stuff. Now, given he's, I think he owns about half the company, but still, it's and so arguably, whoever owned the other half of the company, they're a sucker if those assets were sold, at below market rates, or if those assets were undervalued for the purposes of backing those loans. But I wouldn't say that this doesn't look like genius, make you rich style corporate rating to me. It sounds like it sounds like a shit show is what it sounds like. When you have to loan that much money to a company that you bought that is not doing well, and then you are not doing anything substantial to improve the prospects of the company, not really investing in the company. The absentee CEO, Lampert, is not well liked at Sears. He runs the company from afar, staying at his home in South Florida. He mostly interacts with Sears executives in suburban Chicago through conference calls. Sears corporate filings list Lampert's primary office as his Miami area home. Everyone knows it's the last company, the last person you want to work for in retail, said Jamie Ward, head of the retail finance group at Citizens Bank. He doesn't get retailing. It's been obvious to everyone in the company. The headquarters employees have been working under duress for the last 5 to 10 years. No wonder they're having to pay these retention bonuses to executives, because these people don't want to be there in the first place. It's a shitty place to work because it's ruled by a guy who doesn't know what he's doing. Sears had little direction under his stewardship. He failed to hire experienced retail leaders, appointing himself CEO in 2012. He gave up the CEO title as part of its bankruptcy filing, turning the company over to a group of other top executives, though he remains its chairman. You have to employ experienced people. You have to protect your most important, most productive assets, said Mark Cohen, the former CEO of Sears Canada, now the director of retail studies at Columbia University. He did none of that. Lampert has defended his record by claiming he prolonged the company's life with his loans. He points to the vast sums of money that he and his hedge fund had pumped into Sears in recent years. This funding has given the company time it would not otherwise have had to adjust its operations, attempt to return to profitability, and maximize its asset values, he said in a September blog post. Lampert did not respond to multiple requests for comment. So he gave the company money, but he didn't actually lead. Lampert stuck with Sears longer than most private equity investors, which typically have a much quicker trigger on moving into bankruptcy and then liquidation once losses start to mount. Toys R Us, Sports Authority, Gymboree, and Claire's, all purchased by private equity firms, ended up in the same boat. But critics said Lampert stuck with Sears simply to give himself a chance to harvest most of its valuable assets. The cynical side of me says he's been staying with the business for the benefit of Eddie and his hedge fund, and at the end of the day, he'll make out just fine. I don't know about that. I don't know the way the cash flows work. Lampert could continue to benefit from Sears long after the company's bankruptcy. He offered to buy the company's Kenmore appliance brand, once valued at $2 billion, for $400 million, and offered $70 million to $80 million for part of Sears' home services division. Those deals never happened, but he still could end up buying some of those assets as part of the bankruptcy auction. Sears also intends to sell most of its remaining stores as part of the bankruptcy process. Lampert is expected to be the initial bidder for those properties. If Sears does go out of business, Lampert could continue to sell Kenmore appliances, rent stores to other retailers, or develop the properties into condos or other uses. Does this sound like a guy who really likes developing stuff? All right, but let's think about this for a second, right? So you stick with Sears, you stick around, and you buy its assets at really low prices, right? But your stock is worthless, and you're not going to get your loans paid back, right? In theory. I mean, if the company is really selling you these things at really low prices, then then it's not getting the money that it would need to pay you back. So, I think that the bottom line from a high level, as far as I can tell from this, is that other creditors are just completely hosed because they have equity, and that equity is now not worth anything. Lampert had equity. He now doesn't have equity, just like the other equity holders, but he does seem to have the cash from who knows where, from other investors, from himself. He does seem to have the cash to be able to buy Sears assets at presumably fire sale prices in bankruptcy. Like, presumably a lot of these properties and things are worth a lot less if the Sears business that has been paying the rent on that store, that is like designed to be a Sears perhaps, goes out of business. And so now you have to find another retailer, something else to go there. You have to negotiate that contract. The site is going to be empty for some amount of time, but I think you're still going to have to pay property tax on it. You're still going to have to pay for security to keep the store from being broken into and vandalized. So because of his special access, I suspect that his losses in the equity will be offset somewhat through buying these things. I would love to see an analysis of how he could actually come out ahead in this. How can you come out ahead in this situation by taking a productive business? Although, admittedly, I don't think Sears was in the best position when he bought it. But basically taking a business and running it into the ground. How in the world does that work out well for you? It would be awesome to see, if he had taken that Kmart money and he had just bought the S&P 500, how would he be now? How about that? Would that be better? Because if that would be better, then this whole Sears thing is just a shit show for him. It's not that good. It was just a bad business move. And, it's for the employees, for the people who have pensions with it, it's a sad situation. But, frankly, it was a sad situation for them anyway, because if their entire financial life is tied up in maintaining this job that considers them expendable, that's paying them minimum wage, things weren't going to work out anyway. Because you can't rely on that situation to guarantee your financial stability. You have to manage that yourself. You have to be your own business. You have to be a business that keeps going when your main consulting client, right, which is your full-time job or your part-time job or whatever it is, quits and leaves. You have to have other clients that you're serving that are paying you money. You have to have other sources of income. You have to put brain cells into thinking about this. But backing up to the original thing, I really hope that Sears can salvage something from this. I hope that they can salvage, I don't know what it is, but parts of their business that are still productive and still profitable, so that the people working at those places continue making money and have a shot at perhaps growing those individual pieces back up into something competitive. Who knows? All right, well, that is it for 5 Year Club video number 313. I hope that this gave you a little bit more depth on what's going on in the situation. It's not a simple situation. And there are a lot of moving parts. And I think that what is practical to get the best outcome from one of these situations is not beautiful. It's not fair. It's not about being fair. It's just, it's utilitarian. It's what outcome do you want? What is the best outcome going to be? What do you have to do to get there? Is that palatable enough? I mean, these bonuses, in the context of $4 billion negative assets, another $20 million a quarter really doesn't move the needle. All right, well, have a fabulous evening.